MSC Cruises has become the internet's favorite punching bag. You've seen it all: buffet meltdowns, service disasters, and TikToks roasting the ship like it owes them money. They say it's the dollar store of cruising. Everything's cheap, the service is a gamble, and you might leave more frustrated than full. But here's where things get weird. For every angry post swearing off MSC forever, there's another cruiser saying it was their best cruise yet. So what's actually going on? I've sorted through the biggest complaints, the boldest claims, and the most brutal reviews to show you what's legit and what's totally blown out of proportion. Hey y'all, I'm Evan with Family at Sea, where we help make every cruise unforgettable. This video isn't about how to get a deal on MSC or why it's so cheap. It's about why so many people refuse to sail them, even when the price is impossible to ignore. I've seen more polarized opinions on this cruise line than any other, and it's really not even close. Some cruisers say it's the best bang for your buck vacation they have ever had, and others act like they barely made it off the ship alive. But what confuses me isn't MSC as a cruise line, it's how extreme their reviews are. So in this video, we're digging into the biggest complaints people have about MSC Cruises, which parts of the hate are actually true and which ones are way overblown, and what you need to know before you sail so you don't get blindsided. If you're ready, I am. Let's go. Before we get too far into this, let's talk about where the hate is actually coming from. Because if you've read the reviews on sites like Facebook or Cruise Critic, or if you've watched other videos here on YouTube or TikTok, you've no doubt heard the same handful of complaints pop up again and again. So in this section, we're going to break down the biggest gripes people have with MSC Cruises, compare them to today's reality, and figure out which criticisms are legit and which ones might be stuck in the past. First up, the food. MSC gets absolutely roasted online for having bad food and even worse dining service. And honestly, that used to be true. Especially for American cruisers, the menus felt uninspired, the meals were slow to arrive, and the service in the main dining room left a lot of people wondering if their waiter had gone on break halfway through dinner. But things have changed a lot. Over the past couple of years, the entire dining experience has improved dramatically on MSC's US-based sailings. No, it's not five-star gourmet cuisine, but it's no longer the punchline it once was. I've had meals on MSC that absolutely held their own against any of the mainstream cruise lines operating out of the US. Not every dish is a slam dunk, but it's not on any of the other lines either. The pastas are consistently excellent, the risottos are flavorful, and even the escargot and lobster night have been solid across multiple ships. And service-wise, MSC has stepped up their game there as well. The pacing has gotten better, staff are more attentive, and instead of feeling like you're waiting 90 minutes for an entree, things are running much more efficiently. So the verdict here, overblown and outdated. Now let's talk about one of the most common pain points for MSC guests: the buffet. Specifically how it feels overcrowded and chaotic, especially during peak times. And if you've sailed MSC, you've probably lived this firsthand. The buffet gets absolutely slammed during breakfast and lunch. The traffic flow is a mess, people are weaving in and out of lines, there's no clear direction, and finding a table can feel like winning the lottery. Some of this comes down to ship design, but there's another layer here too. MSC has a uniquely international guest base, and that means people from all sorts of cultural backgrounds coming together, and those cultural norms don't always line up the way Americans might expect. You'll see folks walk right past a line, cut in at the front, or reach across your plate to grab a roll. It's not malicious, but it's definitely different norms. But in a crowded buffet, it can feel like pure chaos. And while other cruise lines offer a variety of free casual spots like Indulge Food Hall on Norwegian, El Loco Fresh on Royal, or Guy's Burger Joint on Carnival, MSC leans heavily on the buffet to carry the load during lunch. And that puts even more pressure on a space that's already working overtime. Now, they have made progress. Newer ships are better laid out with more food stations and improved traffic patterns, and the World America in particular made noticeable improvements. But overall, the complaints about the buffet experience aren't coming out of nowhere. So the verdict here? True. Service is another area where MSC takes a beating, not just in the dining room, but across the entire ship. You'll hear people say the crew was rude, the bartenders were slow, their room steward was barely around, and while some of that may have been true in the past, I think a lot of it comes down to mismatched expectations. MSC ships look upscale with all the chrome finishings and Swarovski crystal stairs, and people expect a luxury experience, but when it doesn't feel luxurious, they call it bad service. But if we're comparing apples to apples here, being MSC versus other budget-friendly cruise lines sailing out of the US, they're right in line with where the competition is. These days, the crew is friendlier, service is more consistent, and bars and lounges are better staffed than they were in the past. On recent sailings, I've seen the kind of efficiency and attentiveness that you'd expect on Carnival or Norwegian, and sometimes better. No, it's not the same service you'd get on a premium line like Celebrity, but that's not a fair comparison either. So the verdict here, overblown and outdated. Another frequent knock on MSC is that the whole ship just feels chaotic. Too many people, not enough quiet space, venues that are too small for the crowds they attract. And yeah, that's a real thing, especially on holiday sailings or during peak family seasons. Elevators are jammed, lounges fill up early, shows require tickets that you can't book before the cruise. But that's not all entirely unique to MSC. I've experienced the same level of chaos on other major lines, especially during spring break or major holidays. Our Thanksgiving cruise on the Sun Princess was far more chaotic than anything I've ever experienced on MSC. Still, it's fair to say that older MSC ships don't always make the best use of space. The good news is they're clearly trying to fix that. The World America took a big step in the right direction with a better layout, more intuitive flow, and improved crowd management. So the verdict here, true at times, but improving. One of the other big complaints about MSC is the constant upselling and hitting costs. And this one's tricky because it depends on what you're comparing it to. MSC definitely has some nickel and dime moments, and you'll pay extra for certain desserts, specialty coffee, bottled water at dinner, and some attractions like Robotron or Cliffhanger, but let's zoom out. Other cruise lines are doing the same exact thing. Carnival charges for room service, Royal charges for attractions like Crown's Edge, Norwegian charges for almost everything, even with their More at Sea program. When you compare it side by side, MSC's prices for things like spas, services, and specialty restaurants are actually lower than the competition. So yes, there are extra charges, but is MSC uniquely aggressive about it? Not really. So the verdict here, partially true, but exaggerated. And yeah, let's not forget to talk about the announcements. For a while, it felt like every activity, sale, or safety reminder had to be translated for the entire United Nations. And yeah, it got old fast. But here's what most people don't realize. Those announcements are based on the nationalities of the guests on board. And as MSC continues to grow in the US and more Americans and Canadians fill the ships, the number of multilingual announcements has dropped significantly. On our past couple MSC cruises, all the announcements were in English only. In fact, the only announcements we've heard in a language other than English recently was on the Norwegian Aqua, where they spoke Portuguese in addition to English. So while the language overload used to be a real issue, it's honestly becoming a thing of the past. So the verdict here, mostly outdated. It depends on the guest mix, but on US-based sailings, it's rarely an issue any longer. And finally, entertainment. This one has been a long-standing issue for MSC, and I haven't exactly been quiet about it. And especially for American guests used to more traditional performances, older MSC ships featured shows that felt more like interpretive dance parties than anything with a storyline. Lots of lights, lots of acrobatics, but no dialogue, no plot, and you leave confused instead of entertained. Compare that to the epic Broadway shows that used to be standard on Norwegian, like Fire of Man or Jersey Boys, or the epic Aqua shows on Royal, and yeah, MSC just never really stood a chance. But that started to shift. The World America debuted with a totally different approach. Queen Symphonic in a panoramic lounge blends live vocals, a full band, and an incredible production, and it's honestly one of the favorite shows we've ever seen at sea. The World Theater is offering shows that actually feel like a show, with talent and structure and pacing that finally hits the mark. And live music venues that actually play music you want to stick around and listen to. Even comedy has a dedicated space now, and the programming feels more thought out. So the verdict here, mostly true, but changing fast. So where does that leave us? MSC has definitely earned some of the criticism it's received over the years, especially on older ships or during those weird early pandemic years when expectations were high and execution was Well, it was not. But a lot of the outrage online is stuck in the past. Today, MSC is evolving, and they're evolving fast. They've made real progress with food, service, entertainment, and even crowd flow. While some issues are still hanging around like buffet chaos, most of what people hate about MSC either isn't as bad as it sounds, or it's not unique to MSC at all. Which brings us to the bigger question. If the hate isn't totally accurate, then what does MSC actually get right? And why are so many cruisers going back again and again despite all that noise? Well, let's dig into that. Before we get into this next part, let me be absolutely clear. I know anytime I ever say something good about any cruise line, some of you assume I'm only saying it because I'm getting paid to say it. But MSC didn't pay me to say any of this. This video isn't sponsored and I'm not on their payroll. I put a lot of work into sharing both the good and the bad with you guys, and I've tried to share both sides of that in this video. Now, let's flip the script for a second, because once you get past the angry Facebook posts and one-star reviews, there's a reason MSC is one of the fastest growing cruise lines in the world. In fact, there are some things MSC gets shockingly right, stuff that doesn't always show up in reviews, but absolutely shapes the onboard experience. And it starts with one word: value. We're not talking about rock bottom fares, we're talking about what you get for the price. On most MSC sailings out of the US, you're on a newer ship with legit curb appeal, sailing to desirable destinations, often for hundreds and sometimes thousands less than the competition. If you're a value-conscious cruiser, a family trying to stretch your budget, or someone who just wants a relaxing getaway without paying a premium for the brand name, this is where MSC shines. Here's the kicker: most of the US-based ships aren't old budget cast-offs. They're sleek, modern, and in many cases better looking than what you'll find on Carnival or Norwegian. They have glass elevators, glowing crystal staircases, a massive promenade with shops and entertainment, and it's objectively a beautiful product. But figuring out which MSC ship is actually right for you, well, that part can get confusing fast, which is exactly why I always book through Cruises It. They don't just slap you on the next available sailing, they actually help you book smarter, the right ship, the right cabin, and the right vibe. And if your idea of a vacation doesn't include getting seated next to someone named Linda at dinner who wants to show you all 473 photos from her cat's birthday party, well, they got you covered. Sorry, Linda. They've saved me money, scored me upgrades, and helped me avoid rookie mistakes I didn't even know I was making. And with their low price guarantee, it means you're not overpaying just because you didn't know where the deals were hiding. So if you want a smoother booking experience and maybe to dodge a few Lindas along the way, click the link in the description or call the number on the screen and tell them Evan from Family at Sea sent you. And speaking of smart decisions, let's talk about the World America. This ship isn't just a new build, it's a breakthrough. The World America finally feels like MSC understands what American cruisers are actually looking for. They've added more food options, quick bites, better poolside choices, and even some legit late night snack options beyond just their signature pizza. There's also a noticeable upgrade in the bar and lounge lineup. You're not walking into the same chrome and glass lobby bar over and over again. The venues have their own vibe now, and it finally feels like they put some thought into variety. Crowd flow is better too. It's still a full ship, but the layout actually helps people spread out instead of piling up in the same few spots. And the entertainment saw the biggest improvement of all. For the first time, it feels like they're actually trying to create shows you actually want to go back and see again. Not just filler content, but real performances, especially standouts like Queen Symphonic in the Panoramic Lounge and the full productions in the World Theater. This is the ship that shows MSC is turning a corner. It's not perfect, but it is absolutely heading in the right direction. And then there's Ocean Key. Look, cruise line private islands are everywhere now, but Ocean Key is legitimately different. Instead of a floating water park or a theme park on sand, it's a restored marine reserve that's genuinely peaceful. There's live music, soft beaches, and crystal clear water that glows during sunset. It's not perfect, but in a sea of copy-paste private islands, Ocean Key actually feels like something different that gives it a sense of identity that's hard to copy. While it only applies to a small slice of passengers, we can't ignore the Yacht Club. It's without a doubt the best ship-in-a-ship experience at sea. Dedicated butlers, private restaurants, priority everything, and service that actually feels 5-star instead of just $5 signs. It's not gimmicky, it's legitimately good, and it's become a secret weapon for MSC's growing fan base. So sure, MSC might not be the perfect cruise for everyone, but they're also not trying to be. And the more you understand that, the more MSC starts to make sense. So who should actually book MSC and who's probably better off somewhere else? Well, let's discuss that. So So by now, you'll probably realize MSC isn't your typical cruise line. They don't follow the same playbook as Royal or Carnival, and that's exactly why they work so well for some people and totally miss the mark for others. If you book an MSC cruise expecting a familiar American-style experience, you might spend the week confused or frustrated. But if you know what you're getting into, and more importantly, who this cruise line is actually built for, it can feel like you've hacked the system. MSC is ideal for travelers who want a premium-looking ship without paying luxury prices. For families who'd rather spend $5,000 on an entire vacation rather than just a single balcony stateroom. For adventurous cruisers who don't need their hands held, and those who care more about stylish design, unique destinations, and cultural variety than character breakfasts or karaoke every night. It's also a surprisingly strong fit for seasoned cruisers looking for something different. If you've done Royal, Carnival, and Norwegian 10 times each, MSC gives you a fresh take, with ships that feel more European, menus that don't always follow the crowd, and a vibe that's a little more cosmopolitan than chaotic, at least when it's firing on all cylinders. But that doesn't mean it's for everyone. If you want seamless crowd control and maxed out family amenities, Royal Caribbean still sets the gold standard, especially on the Icon class ships. If you're chasing immersive entertainment and elevated service, Disney and Celebrity are going to be a better fit. And if you're expecting over-the-top pool decks and an always-on party vibe, Carnival's probably more your speed. MSC is a different flavor, and like anything with a strong flavor, not everyone's going to love it. But for the right cruiser, it's a home run. If you understand the trade-offs, set realistic expectations, and book the right ship, you might walk away saying what so many of us have. It's not perfect, but for what you paid, it's hard to beat. So here's the bottom line. MSC isn't the cruise line people think it is, at least not anymore. Some of the complaints still hold water for sure, but a lot of the hate, well, it's based on outdated experiences, unrealistic expectations, or people who simply booked the wrong cruise for the kind of vacation they actually wanted. The truth is, MSC has improved a lot, especially in the US market, and if you know what to expect, it can offer a seriously enjoyable cruise for a fraction of the price. But if you're wondering how they're able to offer such low prices in the first place, well, that's a much deeper story, and one that explains why some travelers walk away raving while others walk away ranting. So when you're ready, go check out this video next. It breaks down exactly why MSC cruises are so cheap and what's really going on behind those jaw-dropping fares. If you're ready, I am. Let's go.